All right. Well, with that, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. As Vic said, we would love to hear where you're from. Feel free to drop that in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. I'm Caitlin Barnard. I'm part of our developer marketing team here at Kong. And I'd like to welcome you all to Tech Talks by Kong. So at the end of the presentation, we will open it up for Q&A and discussion. Vic will try and keep an eye on the chat and Q&A as well throughout, but please feel free to leverage that chat functionality. But if you do have any questions, so the chat's at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, please drop those in the Q&A tab. Those help us keep a little bit better track of those questions and make sure we're getting all of those answers to you at the end. This is being recorded and we will send you a copy of it via email, typically within 24 hours. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Vic.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, guys, folks, welcome to this webinar. We're going to talk about developers guide to multi-cloud API operations with Kong Konnect. Very mouthful, and we're going to be covering a lot of things. For those of you who first time join us for Tech Talk, my name is Viktor Gamov. I work here as a developer advocate with Kong, focusing on everything, starting from gateway to service mesh to talking about like microservices developers, and obviously Kong Konnect, which going to be focused on today. So I see we have a very good representation from all over the place. India, New Zealand, Spain, Canada, from Nova Scotia. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Brazil, neighbors from Connecticut. Great. Now, let me know in the comments, what are your expectations of here? So you're a developer. So it was intended for developers. And I'm trying to explain a little bit on operation side of things and how we operate in gateways and how the people operate in gateways, and why you need things like Connect. All right. So that's my quick agenda. Things we can have multiple turns, depend on the questions that might have. But essentially, I would like to talk a little bit about the why developers should care about Connect, or like if you're not aware about Connect, why are you sleeping on this? Why are you missing out with the learning about Connect? We're gonna use very exciting technology to explore today. So I was very inspired by internal presentation that my team were doing with some of the chat GPTs and open AI APIs. So we're going to look into building blocks of this chat GPT. We're going to look into text completion API, how we can use it and how we can turn it into something that will be consumable within the organization, something that a Kong Konnect platform will allow to configure. And we're going to play around with the gateway side of things, and we're going to cover some of the basic use cases like defining routes, defining some of the like simple plugins, to more advanced rate limiting capabilities based on consumer groups. How about that? Okay, so this is very inspirational slide. There's a lot of things going on here. And this is something that I will show in the very beginning to give you kind of like a roadmap where we go in with all this. And with different components that cover different aspects of your API management journey. Specifically, when you think everyone likes to build the platforms, but because platforms are great, they cover all use cases. And sometimes developers are kind of like get lost in this kind of like the architectural BS diagrams. Today, we're going to be focusing on gateway side of things, and how we can provision, how we can enable the plugins, configure plugins. So we're going to focus on a data plane, what's we call like the gateway side of thing for API management, how we can control and configure. And at the end, I also show how those things can be replicated through automation. Automation is important, and that's all. That's it. That's all my slides. I wanna focus on slideless presentation next. Before I join with Konnect, I will like to give you intro into how Kong Gateway essentially deployed. You are a developer. When you are a developer, you really want to care about two simple things. One thing is your Kong Gateway instance and configuration of your Kong Gateway. That will include your services, your routes, your plugins. Simplest possible way how you can deploy or developers deploy Kong is by defining this declarative configuration. Enable Kong is what we called we call it DB-less mode, because this mode doesn't have any database here. That's my ribbon that will be explaining what happens on this slide. So with this, in Kong declarative configuration, we will have our services configured, we have a routes configured and plugins configured. If we need to update this, we need to submit this new file to config admin API. Rest of the admin API endpoints will be available for read-only. So this is kind of like an immutable environment, suitable for development, suitable for integration testing, and suitable for some of the corner cases that we develop inside the Kong. And we're using this, for example, in Kong Ingress Controller, which is our a management layer for Kubernetes. If you use this, just do a thumbs up in the slide if you're using the Kong Ingress Controller right now. Now, many developers, many operators, many people like to use our admin API to configure services, because think about this. With this YAML, you have only one file. If you need to just change something in the service, you need to resubmit this configuration. You need to update this. So it would be great if you will have admin API that allows you to do this incrementally. So that's why we're running Kong in our so-called traditional mode. So with traditional mode, we introduce a database. Database will have a persistence layer for our API in our configurations. All these things will be stored inside database, and admin API will enable access to those services through admin API. So you will be able to do mutations, you will be able to create service, delete service, and after restart, you will be able to configure, rehydrate this configuration. More importantly, you will be able to use multiple instances of Kong Gateway with the same configuration, even though you still need to have, this is kind of like a clustered mode, but instead, if you need to like route traffic, you still need to have a load balancer in front. You might even have, if you go in the fully meta, we can have a Kong Gateway in front that will be configured with the Kong YAML file, and after that will be load balancer between those nodes. However, this is pretty cool. This is something that many people are doing. This is something that this is why it's called traditional deployment. And this traditional deployment can be extended by introducing a few more components. We do have a Kong manager for UI and for managing things, and they can use same database, developer portal for publishing the services and enabling the services for other users. And now we can start seeing dependency on the database becoming a bottleneck. And because our gateways need to go there and get configuration, if configuration was changed through the Kong manager with this database, there will be some time, a little bit of time that happens between the changes will be pulled back into configuration. So there would be some of the eventual consistency. That's for my distributed system folks, eventual consistency for configuration on the Kong. Now, and this is the moment where a couple years ago, we turned things around. We turned things around and introduced this configuration that we called hybrid mode. In the hybrid mode, Kong Gateway is not connected to this database. It's not connected to database, but it's connected to another Kong instance that will have different role. We separated the role of data plane that will be responsible for you pushing traffic through your data plane. And your control plane, it's also another instance of Kong, that will be responsible for updating configuration, admin API, syncing database. When you change something in the control plane will push it down to different environments. Drastically increases complexity of the system, but increases developer productivity, because you don't need to worry as a developer. You deploy your data plane, connect to your control plane, you get configuration, and you're good to go. And your Kong manager, your developer portal, all the things will work. Victor, you might ask, like someone in the comments might ask, Victor, but what if I want to have configurations that will be depend on environment? Say I do have my testing environment for Kong, and I have my staging environment, I do have my QA environment, I do have my pre-production production environment. How I can do this? So with this configuration, things becoming slightly easier than it would be with the previous use cases, because you need to replicate this database. However, you still have this situation when you need to migrate this configuration between environments. With declarative configuration in tools like Deck, you will be able to say, create this environment in one place, you can dump this configuration, after that propagate this configuration to another environment. However, with the hybrid mode, you need to manage your environments, say QA, you need to basically replicate all this thing into different environments. And this is where Konnect comes into play, and solving some of the pains for developers, where, so first of all, you don't need to maintain database. We're maintaining database. We're managing the configuration layer. And through this fantastic feature, I think it's one of the revolution features that our customers are loving, is to have a runtime groups where you can segregate different environments. So in this case, it can be Kong data plane that runs on your QA, and this one will be runs on your prod. More importantly, with this configuration, you can also scale this environment not only within different environments dimension, but also in geographical dimensions. We support a geo-distributed deployment of the Konnect. You can segregate them based on geographies, because as the developers will like to build our stuff. However, the boring things like governments and the borders and local regulations come into play. So we need to obey those things when we're developing an application. We develop an application in the US, but if we're processing data of users who are in European Union, we need to store this data in European Union. So that's why this comes into play as well. So what do you need to do? Without Konnect, you probably will go and deploy this in somewhere in the European Union. With Konnect, you just need to enable another geography, and you're good to go. So as of now, we have a fully managed control plane that we're going to be focusing today. So control plane, we will be operating against control plane, and control plane will be responsible for shipping our configuration to our data plane. Now, let me know in the comments because this is the point where I'm switching the gears and going full in code and demonstrations and all these things. If something that I just said is not quite clear, or you want to have some sort of clarification about these architectures, in general, again, you need to remember we have only four deployments. DB-less mode, simple as possible for development, and in this case, your Kong YAML will be your source of truth. With traditional mode, you have a database, you have admin API, you can configure services, you can have multiple gateways connected to the same database. They can share configuration. One of the gateways can change this configuration, another gateway will pick up this eventually. With hybrid mode, we have a control plane that will be responsible for consistent configuration and pushing back all this configuration to our data planes. And with Konnect, we have multi-tenant, fully decentralized, fully managed control plane that allows you to configure not only different environments, but you can have a really not sophisticated, but really complex deployments, like really heterogeneous. You can have a deployment in Docker and in Kubernetes, and they can be the same control, same runtime group, and same configuration will be shared. Yes, John Williams asking the fantastic question. So when we're running this in the hybrid mode, how we can manage multiple environments? So in this particular case, you need to replicate deployment, maybe smaller scale, but still you need to replicate the deployment across multiple different environments. So for QA, you will have your own installation of control plane. For QA database, you need to have a QA database to store the Kong, and obviously you need to have a QA create the gateways. You can use, if you're running this on-prem, you still can use something that we call workspaces to segregate the services. But the thing like runtime groups, you can get as of now only in Connect. Hope it makes sense, John. Now let's dive into this demo. So I have a Patrick comment to clarify. In hybrid mode, data plane does not have DB and must connect it to control plane. Absolutely right. So with the hybrid mode, one of the processes that Kong binary can take on is either data plane, control plane. You can configure this. And only thing that Kong gateway in this particular case will require is connection to control plane. And it is not like, it is bidirectional. So when the Kong gateway starts, it has a configuration where to connect for control plane and how to connect this, and the rest of this stuff, this thing will be constantly updating, is bidirectional. In hybrid mode, actually, think about this, because the Kong gateway doesn't store anything, so there's no database, there's nothing. It is very good scenario for for security reasons also. With security reasons, like if your gateway itself would be compromised, no one else will be able to access your configs, because they're simply not storing, and the only way to connect to control plane would be using the key and certificate to connect, because the connection between control plane and data plane is also secured using the SSH. So yes, thank you for this question, Patrick. Now, what I would like to show you today. So I'm going to start with simple cluster. I will be running my Kong gateway. I will be running this in US East. I guess it's US 1 or ES 4. I will be running this in Kubernetes, just simply because I wanted, if I will be talking about the, that's my attempt to do Kubernetes stuff. Maybe it's not right. I need to play around with my drawings. This is available right now. It's on public internet, so if you want to follow along, you will be able to do this. Before I do this, let me show you what we're going to be working with. So I would like to use a public API that is available, and we're going to be using this text completions. How many of you played around with ChatGPT? Like you ask to write a email for you, or maybe asking question and trying to convince it that it's wrong on something. So essentially, it's done through this framework of text completion, and when you submit the prompt, it will use the information that it trained on to provide the response. And they expose this as a REST API. There is a REST API that you can play around. And this is what we're going to be using today. So I'm going to be using, I wanted to provide access to this thing to my developers inside my organization. However, I don't want them to register on this thing, have a, like put their credit card we do in the centralized way. So I already provide this. Only thing that they will need is to connect to my gateway, and I will be able to control who can see which things. Since I mentioned pricing, it's very important because in the past we like to talk about, when we're talking about performance, we like to talk about things like optimized algorithms, maybe faster networks, like putting the faster hard drives and faster CPUs. These days, if you want to have a optimized performance, you just need to swipe credit card much harder, because you will get say more powerful instances if you're running this in cloud, in the things that you're running in AWS, for example. Same here with ChatGPT. We have different pricing based on the quality of model, of the model that will be responsible for generating text. Let me show you how the quality of life changes if we're changing different models. So we're going into this, I'm using this ChatGPT completions URL. So we'll be trying to do different models. So we'll start with the simple, let me just clean up because it's going to be spoiler. Oh, I'll just do clear history. Yes. So I'm going to start with the simple model called ADA, and see how this will be able to work. And here I would like to ask, what is Kong? And when I submit this question, response time is 900 milliseconds. So it's relatively fast. But we're getting interesting response here. It's fast, but response would be Kong is computer game played by zones on Tatooine planet. Player armored Kong is computer game played in zones Tatooine planet. Interesting. So if we're gonna be say like okay, if I want to pay more for better model, let's see. There's another model called Babbage, and when I run this, and Babbage response time, I guess some caching happened. It says Kong is a character and the mascot of Nintendo Entertainment System. Okay, but not exactly what we expected, right? So let's go with the more advanced model, like called Curie. All right, Kong is a software company that creates video games and other software products. It close to that's a software company and other things, but it's not that close with the Mario and Donkey Kong games. So now let's use DaVinci, which is more advanced model, more sophisticated model, and this model used inside ChatGPT. So to when you're writing this conversational chat, it uses a same DaVinci model for generating text responses. So let's see what DaVinci would say for us. Now, check this out. It took us almost like 3 seconds to get the response, but I like this response much better. Kong is open source API management platform that provides reliable and publishing, consuming, managing APIs, provides simple, efficient way to route secure. So by simply switching different models, making like smarter models, and as you can see, more expensive models. So in this case, it's a 10 times more expensive than Curie. Hopefully, like, let's see if I will be able to call it 10 times like Curie model. It still stick with the with this. Okay, what is the best cloud cloud native AP gateway, and why it is Kong? Okay, let's see what DaVinci would tell us. Kong is the most popular and powerful cloud native gateways. Okay, enough said. Let's see if a query model, if I adjust my request, maybe query model would be good enough for us. See, so I was able to tweak my prompt to get slightly interesting, slightly different response here. So we're going to be focusing on this one. Okay. We're going to focusing on these two models. Since our developers, we want to expose this API to our developers, and we know that the two models will be different. We need to provide the way how they can consume it. And most importantly, we want to restrict this. One way to do this would be first of all, let's create a service. So this is the My Konnect platform. So inside My Konnect platform, I selected North America. We will switch to Europe afterwards. And one of the things that we will be dealing with, this is our control plane. And inside our control plane, I will be seeing different runtime instances. It's our data planes, instances of Kong running. And here I can see I have a few instances that running inside this. One instance is running the old version of Kong. Another instance is running a, let me hide this. Let me move this to another screen because it will be up. So few Kong data planes instances are running here. The one that I will be using right now deployed latest and greatest version as of today. Maybe tomorrow it will change. That runs inside Kubernetes. And this Kong gateway instance is available for me if I will go and say that's my URL. If you just hit this URL right now, you will get a classic Kong response saying that response not, the request not found. So nothing is configured, it's running by itself, nothing is there. So one of the things I would like to start is to go to my service hub. Let me kill this service. So it will, and I create new service. Display name, OpenAI. For text compilations, complete ones. Okay. So meanwhile, question from Patrick. How in hybrid mode, are there restrictions on deployment architecture? Can I run control plane on VMs and data plane in Kubernetes cluster? If control plane is okay, VMs can a multiple Kubernetes cluster, each running Kong proxies, all point of the same control plane. Very good question, Patrick. And I promise it's not seeded. So with Kong, there's no restrictions how you can run the things. It's all about give you ability to do things what you like to do. If you like to run this in VMs, you will be able to do this. It's all about automation and configuration. So if your VMs have access to your Kubernetes cluster and vice versa, you will be able to do this. So in this particular case, this is control plane that I'm running in the cloud, and my data plane runs inside my Kubernetes cluster. So let me show you. So if I will go with this, I'm running this in a kube context. So let's see if let's start with US cluster. US cluster, get nodes. I'm running cluster with 3 nodes. And if I will just do kube control get service in namespace Kong, my Kong is running and external IP address is available. So if I will just do dig my cluster US, I'm hitting this external IP address. So my control plane is connected from Kubernetes cluster to my Connect cluster. Since it's a bidirectional communication, I will be able to do configuration in my Connect and push this configuration into my data plane. So what I want to start with this, I'm create the service, create new service version, version number just v1, and create it in runtime group. So this is important. So this service will be configured inside my runtime group that is marked as default. Once again, let me create this and I will show you. In Runtime Manager, I do have a default runtime group that will consist of 2 Kong nodes. One node is 2.8, it's very old and it's compatible, but it's still connected. Maybe there's some of the features will not be available, but I'm configuring this this data plane, and this service will be available here as soon as I will deploy it. Now I'm going with this version 1 and adding implementation. So I will call this open AI text. What is happening with me today? Completion. It's completion. Completion. Completions. Okay. Like this. And URL will be here. We know this URL from this. We'll grab it. Click next. And I will create the route, just the first route for, let's say, DaVinci. For my routes, and the path would be DaVinci. And I'll create this. What was the error? Upstream URL, HTTPS completion. Let's see if I need to do HTTPS. Okay. And I create, and what is this? Service. Let's see. OpenAI. And will I be able to create this one? Okay, so one more time. Service. Huh? Okay, so it was able to, implementation is there. So let's see if the traffic will go in. So if I go to this is the address of my Kong. Let's see if we will be able to send. No routes match, meaning that I'm doing something wrong. Let's see. Let's start over. Delete v1 and open a hub. Let's do start from scratch. Delete service. So meanwhile, question: how the Service Hub different from runtime service in Kong Konnect? So it's a very good question. So essentially, inside this runtime, you also have a gateway services, and one of the things that I will be able to do is to have configure service inside this particular gateway. Service Hub will be used for internal to discover those services and to publishing this in the portal. Let's try this one. OpenAI. This is our URL. And let's see if I'll be able to create the service. Okay, service was created. Now I will be able to create route. Let's see, I can name a route DaVinci. And in this case, this DaVinci route. Okay, now if I'll try this, let's see what is our Kong says in terms of like why Kong cannot get this configuration. I'm going into this in this config. So let's see. It's always great for me to see if the runtime instance, if my runtime is in sync. So it should be in sync, and this route should be configured. Let's send this one more time. Perfect. Now it works. It took some time to push down this configuration from control plane to data plane. Now it says you need to provide a model parameter. So since I can do this and put the DaVinci model in every request, I don't want to do this. I want to provide simplicity for people. They know if they go and hit this DaVinci endpoint, and only thing that I want them to do is provide a prompt. So I can use this Kong gateway functionality to enable this. With this, I'm go ahead and adding plugin called request transformer. So what I wanted to do every time when we are hitting this endpoint, we want to append body to include the model. So in this case, I would say add to body. Just when I submit this to OpenAI, model and particular text. I'll just copy paste it from my previously prepared thing. So I'm adding here, and if someone decides to tinker with this endpoint, I want to also prevent this. So in this case, I will go and replace body. So every time when someone will try to fix the model here, it always will be switching this to DaVinci. Now with this, so when I go and just hit DaVinci, see just a prompt, and Mike's tokens defines how many the words it will return. And we're waiting, and now we had a response. So now if you go, you can even try this doing yourself. It's just do post request to, you can do something like if you go and do something like this, if you go doing something like this, again, I just showed you my OpenID key. I need to remove this afterwards, but you will be able to do this. So right now, I'm including OpenID key with my request, but this OpenID key can be included as a part of gateway, so you don't have to do this. So let's do the same thing for our query model. So we're doing the query model, we're doing with this, and we're going with the query model. And I enable plugin. Also, let's do a request transformer. And we'll put there's regular request. Request transformer. Body. We're doing query. What was the model? We're going here. Query is 01. And you can find the list of the models inside the inside OpenAI replace body. So now if I will go ahead and kick this one, I need to provide the parameter model. In a few seconds, okay, so looks like I'm messed up with the configuration. Let's see if I'm with the model append body and config replace body. That should work. Let's try it one more time. So response actually came in from Kong. We're doing correct URL. We couldn't part request. Likely you aren't using HTTP library correct. OpenAPI spec JSON payload. So let's take a look what kind of problem we might have here. So I'll just do header. And let's see what kind of errors we might have here. Anything here? Query. Strange because it uses the same configuration that I used. add and replace. Maybe copy paste errors happens with the best of us. Okay. And config replace replace body. Yes, correct. Mm, I include bearer. I include the application JSON, and something is not right from Kong. Let's stick with DaVinci, and I will figure out what was not working with the OpenAI. The cool thing is that, if something is not working, I came here prepared. So this is where I already have my the deck configuration file that allows me to quickly get into the point where everything is working. So let's do this. So I'm going into deck, and what I can do, I can use this deck sync and connect runtime group is going to be default, and I will be using my first file that's called one service route in Kong. So what it will do, it ditched all the bad configuration that I had or might have in my config. So it just showed what it replaced and replaced with the things that I already configured. So it also includes some of the plugins that I pre-configured. So we can go ahead and try this one. So let's see if our DaVinci thing is still working. So I can go ahead and just click here. DaVinci model came by. It goes through the Kong, and our Kong is open source gateway. Now with Curie, let's see. Yeah, and if I will do something like what was the request for Kong, and for completion there would be this one. And also we'll do this one. So let's see if Curie model will be up and running. Cool. So the two things working, so that's fine. So there's a question about from Shahnavaz, what happens when we enable application registration? Yes, stick to this. I will talk about this in a moment. So now we do have two routes inside this gateway service. We also publish this gateway service inside this OpenAI. Now, what I can do, I also go to publish this on the portal. And in order to make this even much more cooler, what I can do, I just do upload the spec. So I do have a OpenAI OpenAPI spec. So I upload this here, and it will be rendered on my portal. So if I go to developer portal, I have a developer portal enabled, and right now I using customization, and I use custom URL. So devportal.us.kong builders asking registration. So this is where I have my developer account registered with this portal. It's called Viktor Connect Developer, and I can access to this one, and I'll see what kind of services available for me. I see this OpenAI service that is available. So this is the OpenAI service that available. I will be able to register my applications soon with this. Now, so the next thing is that I want to show you that you can configure this stuff with this runtime manager. We go in with default, we go in with the plugins. Plugins can be also enabled for global. So I do have a global plugin configured, and it was coming from my configuration file that I had before. Always have a backup plan, because the live demonstration can go wrong. So with this, this plugin allows me to put lambdas or like Lua code inside my plugin, and execute any particular code. In this case, what I'm running, I'm adding an extra header that shows where this response comes from. So if I look the header and says upstream host, And I know that the API call comes from this request. Now, the how we can prevent people from doing stupid things, we can do, we can enable sorry, rate limiting on the query, and I can go ahead and say plugins, add plugin, rate limiting, and just the regular ones. We will just do limit by IP, config 60 minutes, and size, where is it? 60 seconds. Let's do 60-second window, not the minute. And we do, where is it? Yeah. And again, the configuration should be based on window size, sliding window, and based on so to config seconds. What I'm missing? 10 requests per second. 10. It's always great to see what is going on with the response. Let's see. Refresh. When I click save, let's see what's the error. At least second, minute, hour, day, month. I have this config in seconds. So 10 minutes. Where's minute? Minute. Yes. Say 10 requests per minute is going to be validation error. Okay. Config seconds. Config seconds. What? Something is not right with the UI today. Okay, so now I put this rate limiting on my query, and when I send this, I should be able to get a rate limiting. So have a the rate limiting is working. So question from Mohan. Yes, Kong Konnect is SaaS offering. Yes, so this is the fully managed. The data plane is managed and things like that. So the question from Patrick: if for environment of a mix of APIs that deployed on Kubernetes, serverless functions, VMs, etc., how Kong config typically managed for the service routes, plugins, and consumers? So how the config is managed, you can connect any type of service. Some of the services can be internal. So for example, right now my cluster is running my Kong running inside the Kubernetes cluster. If I'm running anything inside this Kubernetes cluster, I will be able to expose this to outside world. In our YouTube channel, there is a live stream recording that I did 2 weeks ago with my friend Dennis Magda. We showed the deployment of the microservices that runs inside Kubernetes, and we use Kong and Konnect to expose those services to the outside world. You will get the better idea, Patrick, how this configuration is managed. Now, so the simple request transformer is configured here. Now, what I wanted to do here is to is to have a more granular control over DaVinci. Some of the applications that will be using DaVinci will be in production, some of the in development, and I want to have a rate limiting for DaVinci endpoint that based on a developer needs. So this is where the application registration comes into play. Okay, so what before that, I'm answered this question a little quick. So if Kong Konnect is fully managed data plane, where does control plane reside? Does traffic from data plane traverse over the public and internet when routing requests in the backend service? Very good question. So let me answer this by bringing this picture one more time. And we're going into like this one. So first of all, this is the infrastructure that we manage at Kong. In this particular case, I'm using infrastructure that we running in our North America region, and it's like load balanced, and there's multiple ways how this thing is distributed. Configuration only comes between control plane and data plane. When we push the traffic, when I'm trying to hit this the gateway endpoints here, those gateway endpoints are not going through the connect. Your traffic still going through the Kong. Only configuration changes, which would be like tiny bits comparing to actual traffic that goes through the Kong. So Kong Konnect is never stands in front of your request. Your traffic goes through your data plane. And connection between those two things are encrypted. When I created a connection to my control plane between my data plane, I created two certificates, certificate and key. I put them inside the Kubernetes secret. And when I configure my Kong data plane, I specified what kind of server I want to connect for control plane and what kind of certificates will be used to connect. So hope this helps. Now, so when I go into my service hub, I see my open API, I will be able to enable application registration. Why it is important? So I want to enable my developers who use this inside my inside my organization. So they will be using this API. And also I would like to manage the access to this API. So if I'm going as a developer in my service catalog, I can find my my applications. I have two applications, one for production and for development. Let me do this bigger. John Williams, to clarify, data planes are not hosting in Konnect, but it's a user's responsibilities. Correct. That's correct thing as of today, but we're actually working on providing fully managed solution. So hopefully we will be able to share some news in near future about this. So like for serverless workloads and the people who don't like to manage their own environments, that would be another solution. So could you talk about the role of Kong Ingress Controller in relations of the Kong Konnect? So right now, Kong Konnect, Kong Ingress Controller, it is a control plane for my Kong that runs inside Kubernetes. So I will be able to use Kubernetes native way to configure my routes. How it is related to Konnect? It is not as of today. So you have a choice to deploy. When you're deploying the Kong in Kubernetes, you can deploy this is just a simple deployment with a service type load balancer. And after that, you will be using the admin API to configure Kong. This is the something that I explained earlier. So this particular case, and the Kong gateway can be deployed inside Kubernetes. You will be doing this stuff. With Kong Ingress Controller, you have just a configuration layer that will transform your Kubernetes resources, ingress, service, into something that Kong will understand. So ingress controller will be listening for ingress, turn it into the configuration that will be pushed into Kong. In the future, you will be able to connect your cluster that manages your Kubernetes APIs using Kong ingress controller, and you will be able to see these things through Connect UI. But this would be kind of like a read-only mode. You still only will be using Connect, using Kong ingress controller as your managed solution. Now, inside my service app, so I will be able to do application registration. So let's say inside my production, I do have some application that I will be using in production. In this application, I would like to connect to my OpenAI, register for OpenAI, request access. And I will be able to configure plugins here. Now, I'm going into my OpenAI. Where's my routes? My routes say DaVinci route. So DaVinci route, I want to slice and dice and provide the access to this one based on user credentials. So I have a test environment and production environment. So inside here, I'm going into my application, say my application, test application. And also I would like to register this for service. So I will be able to see those things are available here for me. Now, for my plugin, I would like to add one more plugin. Before that, I will go into my runtime manager, and for default and consumers, I will create two consumer groups. One consumer group, I will call it kind of gold. So I will provide the maximum level of access into this API, say like 100 requests per, or like 200 requests per minute. Select consumers. So this is going to be, so when I enable application registration, it automatically created a consumer for this API for me. So this is my, I guess this is the production one. So let's confirm this. It has this ID 92.A. And if I go to my production application, where's my catalogs? My apps, go into production application, and 92 is my production application. So every time when the consumer will come with credentials of this with this ID, I will be able to override configuration for a rate limiting. So let's save it. And I would say Windows size 60, limit number. So it's going to be like like 20 requests. And another consumer group that I will add, just call it silver. And in this case, I will add this guy. And with this limit configuration, we will have 5. So every time when I come with developer credential to DaVinci route, I will be able only get 5 requests. So in order to configure this, I'm going into my test application, generate credential, test app for webinar. So I'm just generate this one. I got the key. And for my insomnia, what I do is manage environments and go to base environment. So this is my test key that I will be using. And confirm a copy. Okay, it's copied. Now, for my route DaVinci, now I need to configure rate limiting advanced. So rate limiting advanced plugin, I have this configuration called enforce consumer groups, meaning that it will the find a correlation, gold and silver. And based on the key that will be included inside the header, I would be able to route and get different service level agreement. Just config limit, do just for test. Window size 60. It's gonna be fixed. Now, so this is the moment of truth. Let's see. So now I'm hitting my, let's make sure there's now no API key. So I've disabled this API key. So, and I send this request. So unauthorized because API key was not found in the request. And now I enable this API key and send invalid credentials. Let's generate. Let's test if the test thing works. Because I generated for test. So let's take a look at headers. I have a request limit of 5, meaning that based on the key, Gateway was able to correlate this API key to consumer that was registered through developer portal and configure this rate limit for developer portal for a developer key. Now, if I'm going into my application, let's fix production, generate credential, call it prod app or webinar, and I click generate, copy and configure. And inside my manage environment, based environment in production. And here we will replace with production key. So what I'm expecting to see 20 request limit. I replaced with production key, and yes, so huge success. Now, last but not least, the one last thing that I wanted to quickly talk about is how we can move this into different environments. So now I'm running this in the North America, and I will quickly switch to runtime manager that will be running inside European Union, and my runtime is also deployed there. So right now there's no services is deployed here, but I will be able to do this. Say I have this configuration that I already have in my I can just do deck dump. So I can a dump configuration that I have in my runtime group connect for US. So this is my configuration that I just requested from US. And what I can do, I can just do deck sync. File is going to be the same runtime group. And now I also need to do connect address. So now I just need to specify different API for our control plane. So I will push this configuration to say deck sync. All these things were created in my environment in Europe. So let's see if I will be able to get access to say to DaVinci endpoint. So because I didn't enable application registration, it didn't took into account my rate limiting that was configured based on consumer group. I can go and do this, but rate limiting based on the global route still works. So I think it is a huge progress. So we can create this one. So that was it. It was a lot of things today. So first of all, I introduce you to the concept of the Konnect as your like management platform. I explained you different deployment configurations. I showed you how you can configure external service and pass different body elements. We modified the request on the fly by including the model numbers. I showed you how we can enable application registration and have a developer portal configured, and developers can register to service and get the keys. And based on this key, we can provide different service the access to the service. And after that, I showed you how I can just simply took configuration from one place and replicate it to another configuration without me to go in and doing this manual again. So I think it was pretty impressive. So question was, we can apply rate limit with window size none? I don't want to use basic user to have API to use API. I don't want to use basic user to use API after 5 MAX requests. Mahun, I need to a little bit more clarification on this. I don't quite understand this question. Patrick asking, with Connect Cloud, you showed us that we can Kong config looks like for API deployed. With Kubernetes pod, this is a difference to config APIs outside of Kubernetes. So for Kubernetes, you just use your Kubernetes ingress, configuring ingress, configuring plugins. And Kong YouTube channel actually has I did extensive videos around let me show the playlist. We're going into Kong ingress controller, and you can see this is like a very extensive playlist of all the things how you can do with Kong ingress controller. I highly recommend you to check this, like starting with Kong ingress controller to get you up to speed and how you can configure Kubernetes, configure your APIs inside of Kubernetes. Caitlin, I apologize that I ran a little bit over, but I tried to answer all the questions that we had. Let me know if there would be some of the the questions that people asking in other places, in other outlets. But with this, as always, my name is Viktor Gamov, and have a wonderful day.
Yes, thanks, Vic. Thanks for taking some extra time, and thank you everyone else for hanging out with us a little longer. If you just have a couple seconds to take a poll and let us know how you enjoyed today's Tech Talk, it helps us improve these for the future. And then as a reminder, we will be sending out the recording within 24 hours. I'll make sure that you all get the links to connect, some of these videos, all of that to learn more. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to respond to that email and let us know, and we're happy to answer any further questions you have about Connect or anything else Kong related. So Vic, with that, anything else to add before I wrap us up?
Every Wednesday, roughly every Wednesday or every 2 Wednesday, I do have a live streams on our Kong YouTube channel. So highly recommend to subscribe and enable notifications so you get notified when the next stream will be announced. We're going into like a dips into the different configurations. We spent a little bit more time on hacking around, so it's less formal. I'm happy to see everyone's there. I'm really enjoying these conversations, and when they, not only me talking to camera, but also I answering some questions from the audience, and that people get some benefits. But yeah, with this, that was fantastic night, fantastic show. So we did a great job, and thanks so much for all the questions. Those are super useful.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everyone. And hopefully we will see you at a future Tech Talk. Have a great day.
Bye. Take care.